Hey, everybody, welcome to Security Awareness Training. This is actually a really important day. It is October 1st, which means two things.
Q3
Number
is
one,
over.
oh, yeah, it means that too.
Yeah.
But it means two things. Number one, it means that it's the beginning of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which I'm sure that all of you celebrate. And number two, it is 1 year since we started doing security awareness trainings. The history here is that a year ago, mid-pandemic, not that it's over, but mid-pandemic, we were saying, there are a lot of organizations, some of them are customers that haven't done their annual rituals, their annual penetration test, their annual security awareness training, their annual this, annual that. And we thought, what can we do? Like, how can we help folks? And we said, you know what? Mike is very entertaining. Let's have him do security awareness training every week. And so we started, and we thought we'd get 20 or 30 people. We've had some of these sessions with hundreds of people in it. So thank you all for joining. We promise it's never boring. And if you're bored right now, I apologize deeply. Mike, next slide. All right. At the end of this, there will be prizes because we also promised that. There will be a survey and you can fill it out and you can get a gift card or you can donate it to a food bank because aforementioned pandemic. Do something good for the world by being here. The fewer people who click on malicious links, maybe the bad guys will stop doing it. But really, you are doing something good for the world, not giving money and credentials to criminals. For some of you, you're getting credit for being here. That's right. Somebody said, hey, you go there. And then you can get a certificate of completion, which we now have a certificate. So if you want one of those, let us know. And look in the chat on the right. You can see Elise said, welcome, everyone. It's Cybersecurity Month. Elise, I think it's actually Cybersecurity Awareness Month. But anyway, in the chat, we try to keep it going. And so Elise is in the chat. She's the one on the right here. She is a social engineering black belt. If you have questions that you've always wanted to know, you can ask. One of the differences between being here and being in a room with Mike is here, it is not rude to chit chat on the side. If you were in a room with with Mike, what's his name again? If you were in the room with Mike, it would be rude if you did that. Mike Hamilton is the presenter. He's the Critical Insight co-founder. He's the former CISO of the city of Seattle, and he is a punk drummer. Every week I take out the fact that he's a drummer, and every week he puts it back in. It must be important to you, Mike.
It is. I like to count to four and start over, and I like everyone to know that. Yeah.
All right. All right, Mike, take it away. I'll be in the chat if people have questions. Oh, people are saying where they're from. That's awesome. Wow, Mike, we have people all the way from Georgia and New York, and
Cool.
this is cool. All right, go for it.
Okay. All right. So how's everybody doing? Welcome to October. Goodbye Q3, which ended up being pretty good. These are today's headlines. Every morning for the last, every weekday morning for the last 13 years or so, I've put out what we call the IT Security News Blast, and it's headlines, the money quote, the original link. Jake is prevented from doing creepy marketing tracking when you hit the links. But this is what's going on now, and I think everybody knows just from reading your own news that we're having our backsides handed to us. So almost every nation is now in the game here trying to exploit vulnerabilities that they find. And I'll explain what that stuff means. One-time password interception bots. That's probably not a problem. Right now, there is an Azure Active Directory brute force vulnerability that can't be fixed. And what it means is somebody can guess password after password after password, and no alarms will go off, and finally they'll get one and they're in. It's a bit of a problem. And yes, a hospital got hit by ransomware, and they were unable to keep focus on things that they needed to track, and a baby died. Okay, so this is not, the first alleged ransomware death. There have been others, and in fact, there was a survey recently where 20% of the people surveyed said that they were they were certain that deaths had increased as a result of ransomware hitting hospitals. So we'll talk about ransomware. But this stuff is going on now, and I hope you track some of this, because all this is good situational awareness. Why are you here? Well, you may have all kinds of data on your network that you don't want to lose, because it costs money to lose data. And you have to go do the public breach report and fall on your sword and set up a call center and do all these things. And it's really expensive. And so you don't want that to happen. Maybe you are in the public sector and you provide water purification, waste treatment, traffic management, communications for law enforcement, public safety, and you don't want that stuff to fall over, because if it does, again, the potential impact might be people die. Okay, that's a good reason to be here. Maybe it's an annual requirement. Somebody told you to be here, and maybe you're just bored and heard this was going to be kind of fun. So we don't really care why you're here. We're glad you're here. And what we want you to take away from this, and there's a few points I'm going to drill on over and over and over, especially about your passwords, but you need to know this. The internet that you interact with is there to sell to you, steal from you, and manipulate your opinion. And I got to tell you, folks, gullibility has consequences, for real. I know there's a lot of people that recoil in horror when YouTube says we're not going to put disinformation videos about COVID nonsense out there anymore. Gullibility has consequences. Okay. Now your passwords are something somebody's coming after all the time right now. I'm going to show you a lot of examples of what that looks like. It's coming in from all sides, and you need to know that there's been a significant amount of targeting that now goes into these attacks. And so they know who you report to. They know who the CEO is. They know who handles money. Okay. Now look, if you're in business, all this cyber nonsense doesn't mean anything. It's the outcomes you're trying to avoid that cost money. Number one, loss of protected records. Unauthorized disclosure of records costs about $200 a record. Unless you're in the health sector, then it's going to cost about $400 a record. Theft and extortion. Theft through business email compromise. Extortion through ransomware. We know about what that costs. We know it's about a $2 million ask now is the average extortion demand when you get hit with ransomware. Business disruption, you probably know on a per minute basis. If you're in manufacturing, if your manufacturing line goes down, you know exactly how much money you're going to lose and how fast. These are the business outcomes that you want to avoid. So as we go through talking about all the cyber and multi-factor authentication and phishing and all this stuff, stay focused on this. You're trying to not give up your password because you don't want to be extorted for a bunch of money. Okay. All right. Just a few useful terms. I've already started using them, but let's talk about it. So ransomware is the dumb word in the cyber business that we use for extortion. Okay. It is the term that everybody's come to know, so we're going to use it. It's everywhere now. There are lots of gangs, mostly running out of Eastern Europe and Russia, that use this stuff all the time. Some of them directly target critical infrastructure. There's a gang called Conti, and they will go after hospitals, and they will go after local governments, and they go after all kinds of things that we consider to be critical. And there's a whole lot of other gangs that say, if we accidentally tag a hospital, we're going to give you a free decryption key. And there's affiliates out there, and there's ransomware as a service. So you don't have to know how to do anything. You just pay for it with a credit card. Just collect money. You can identify the target. All this is happening right now. Okay. So, it starts the same way everything starts, right? Either somebody breaks into your network, you trip over a bad website, or you give up a password. Don't give up your password. Stay away from the links. Okay, business email compromise. On the low end, I send you an invoice and I hope you pay it. You never heard of me before, but maybe your accounts payable people pay small invoices when they come in. Okay. Kind of mid-range, you're going to get a communication from the CEO or somebody who is in a position of authority, and they're going to ask you to do something like, I need an emergency wire transfer. I need you to buy me these gift cards, and I'll show you examples of these. On the high end, it's sophisticated penetrating a network and changing bank routing numbers so that when you go to pay your vendors, you're actually paying crooks. And we've seen this happen. I've seen this happen from some large cities to the tune of about $1.6 million that got redirected away from charities that they were supporting for housing mothers and children. And so you don't get much more evil than that. Okay, so, right, be aware. Any request for, hey, I need to do an emergency transfer or change these account numbers or these gift cards, just verify this independently. And again, I'll show you some examples of this. Cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency mining is happening a lot. Why? Because cryptocurrency is worth a lot of money right now. What this is a computer running a program that's trying to solve a cryptographic algorithm. And when it does, it spits out a coin. It doesn't physically do that, but a coin is minted that way, and the miner gets paid. Well, if power is real cheap, I go rack up computers out in Wenatchee where all the power comes from falling water, and just go to work mining my crypto out there. Well, bad guys also know that they can use compromised computers all over the world to run these algorithms. And so what they're doing is they're stealing CPU time from you. It's a bit disruptive. So cryptocurrency mining, we found this going on in our SOC for a customer. We found it going on in a VoIP phone system. So it's not just limited to computers. It's anything with a CPU. Okay, now a little more background. You need to know how they get into your network. And I'm going to give you 3 simple ways. Everything needs to be simple and in threes so that people remember this, okay? Number 1, they can break in. How do they break in? There's something called a vulnerability that is exploited, okay? A vulnerability is a problem with a program that you can crack open and you can make it do whatever you want, okay? And I'll give you an example. So, long time ago, guy named Eric Ullman wrote a program called SendMail. And that was one of the first mail transport agents. And it would sit on a computer and it would listen to the internet and wait for something to hand it a piece of mail. And so Eric Ullman writes SendMail. It's a gigantic program. And he says, I need a variable for sender address. Sender address is never going to be over 255 characters. So that's how big the variable space I'm going to allocate for that is. My buffer there is 255 characters. What do you think happens at character 256 or 319 or 427? It overflows the buffer and you're able to punch into the running stack of the system. And if you do it just right, you can make the system run anything you want. That's called a buffer overflow, and it's a pretty commonly used technique. It's not the only used technique, but that's an example of a vulnerability. Well, Microsoft Exchange had a vulnerability, and it was announced at Black Hat and DEF CON, 2 of the cybersecurity conferences. And nearly immediately after this was presented on stage, the scanning started looking for the vulnerable servers, and honeypots, which are computers that are put out there just as listeners to see who's attacking what, started picking up these exploits. It happened that fast, okay? And Microsoft Exchange all over the world was pummeled. And it happened quickly. It was done at scale. Well, if you didn't want to be one of those victims, what do? Okay, well, when they announce something like this, you have to patch, okay? Patch, it's an update. It's what your phone does, right? So if you're a Microsoft customer, Microsoft sends these patches down and it will tell you, you need to reboot now, right? So if you look down at the lower right of your computer and you see a little orange dot down there, stop watching me, reboot your computer. Your iPhone doesn't mess around. It'll say, you need to restart, and finally it just says, I'm doing it. If you have Android or Linux operating systems, Android on a phone, Linux on a desktop or a laptop or something like that, you need to review the admin settings and set that to auto update. So somebody figures out there's a problem, they develop a patch, they send it down to your computer. It may get automatically applied. You may have to do it manually. There may be a reboot involved, but you have to do those things. Okay. And if you're on the IT team and all of a sudden Microsoft says, this patch we just sent is being actively exploited globally, you need to drop what you're doing and treat that as an incident. Nothing is more important than getting that thing patched, because again, you're going to lose records, they're going to steal money or extort from you, or they're just going to knock you down for the sake of knocking you down. And much more of that is going on recently. Okay, number 2. Okay, so they can break into your network. Okay, and that was an example of a way. It's a vulnerability. It's very generalized. Okay, read this for me. Okay, right now you're thinking, hey, Mike, that looks like it's hex encoded. Well, it is. This is a log message from a web server that was run by the Seattle Public Libraries, and it was an application for finding your local library branch. Okay, well, the site was compromised. We figured out because people were calling us up and saying, hey, I went to the Seattle Public Library site and I got whacked. I got malware from doing that. How does that happen? Well, let's hex decode this. Oh, that's what it really says. Interesting technique to hex encode the commands so that they go in a log file and nobody can see them. Anyway, see the part in red there? What this means is you go look for your local library branch. It brings it up. You're looking at a little map. And what you don't know is you're getting a little present from the side from China. Okay. The way this happens is it gets injected into a site. How does that happen? The only way that you can interact with a web application is through the use of form fields. You type something in. A well-formed application will take what you typed and it will look at it and say, is this what I expected? Is this right? Is anything weird here? Okay, I'll hand it to the database. If it's not done correctly, you can put structured query language commands directly into the form field and talk directly to the database, where there's no server-side input validation going on. And if I asked you what kind of sites are the most dangerous for that kind of thing, you would probably not think they are churches, but they are churches. Why? Because they're all coded up by amateurs, by volunteers for the most part. They don't do server-side input validation. Yes, Jake?
I was going to guess churches.
Well, that's because you've been to security awareness training 100 times.
Right.
Okay. All right. So this happens to about 200,000 sites every day globally. And it is a bad problem. And how do you avoid this? You don't hit suspicious links when some internet rando sends you a link. You don't know where it came from. And you don't go, well, I think I'll just check that out. That's a self-inflicted wound. Okay. Here's what happens when you do that. Okay, there's a couple of 156.74s on the left there, and they're talking to the 3111s, but they redirected off to all these bad guy sites, including Macedonia. That's terrifying. Macedonia. So this is what happens when you willy-nilly go clicking on links around the internet, going to places you don't know that were given to you by people you don't know. All right? And then there's number 3. They can break into your computer. You can trip over some hosed up website, or some doofus gives away a password. All right. Now look at this graph. This is from Microsoft. This tells you the rise in phishing sites. Phishing site in this context is something that looks like SharePoint, looks like Microsoft, and it's asking you to put in your password, your credentials. Okay. Well, look at the corresponding drop in sites that push malware on you. All right. Well, that's kind of striking, don't you think? I mean, this data from a couple of years ago, but it still holds. What does this tell you? It tells you that the control that reliably will fail is the one between the ears. Okay, there's no firewall for stupid. That's why this looks this way. People are easy to feel. Yes, I can package up some exotic exploit and figure out how to get you to bite on it and hope that your computer is vulnerable to whatever trick I'm trying, or I can get you to give me a password and I can walk into your network, lay the bomb, light the fuse, and there we go. That's why this is happening. People give away passwords. What do? Well, so there's a number of things. You know that there are a lot of passwords that have already been disclosed on the internet. There's collections of almost 4 billion passwords you can get. Well, I told you about that vulnerability that's right now in Azure AD, Active Directory. Okay. Well, this is what they're doing. It's a bot-driven credential stuffing attack, and they're just password guessing, oh, got a hit. Okay. There's another way that this is done, rather than just guessing a billion passwords on your account. If we look at all of the users in your network, and we go to user number 1, and we try all my billion passwords, and none worked. And then we go to user number 2, we try all the billion passwords, and none worked. Or we can start at user number 1 and try password 1. And then user number 2 with password 1. There's variations on this, right? But what happens is, because this is toggling around like that, nobody gets 3 login failures within 5 minutes and gets shut out of the network, especially if you're going user to user to user to user. This is rampant right now as well. So how does this happen? Well, if you share credentials between accounts, if you have the same password in different places and a place over there gets hacked and the passwords are disclosed, people are going to look for your name in there and they're going to find out where else you have accounts, PayPal, Amazon, Bank of America, whatever. They're going to try that same password. This is why multi-factor authentication is really important. We'll get to that. Okay. All right. Don't reuse passwords. Don't share passwords. We'll talk about, password managers and things like that. Okay. All right. So that's all the background stuff. We're going to get to a whole bunch of examples of bait now. This one works pretty well on folks who are just not very computer savvy. And I'm thinking of my mom, who's 82 years old. Okay. She has no idea if she has Norton on there or not. It says, hey, you're not receiving updates for spyware and viruses and things like that. They're trying to get your credit card. If you have the opportunity, advise your parents and grandparents about as many of these scams as you can remember. And, we'll give you this deck. This is stuff that needs to be shared as widely as possible. Okay. When there is something in the news that creates a lot of anxiety, it's used as bait. Okay. So here we are. This one's got a financial aspect to it. Memo from the Financial Aid COVID-19 Relief Fund. Greetings. Okay. What do you think happens when you click here to view your message? Despite the fact you're already logged into your network, the network knows you're already authenticated, logged in, and fine to be there. What do you think happens when you click here to view your message? It's going to ask you for a password. What do? Stop. Look very carefully. If you didn't expect something to ask you for a password, you stop what you're doing. Look very carefully at what's in front of you. Tell me, what's with the copyright? And exactly who is this from? Who is this to? These are fuzzed out in this particular example right here. But be aware, things that create a lot of anxiety are going to be used as bait, especially, and we knew this was going to happen. When they said we're going to come out with apps that if you have this app on your phone, if you get close to anybody that's been tested positive, it will tell you. And just like that is going to get gamed. Out of the chute, that's going to get gamed. Okay. So if you get a message like this on your phone, not very many people have the COVID app on a phone. So if something just comes through a text message like this, rather than the authorized app, it's fake. Your first reaction to stuff like this is fake. I don't know where this came from. I didn't sign up for this. It's not supposed to come over SMS, just straight text messages. It's supposed to come through an app. Okay. So there's ways that you can go through a little thought process here and say, this is not something I'm going to pay attention to at all. Okay. They're always going for your banking password. Anytime something appears to come from your bank and is asking you to interact, always verify that over the phone. Don't just click. Okay, here's an example. This is kind of low end of business email compromise that we were talking about. So this actually came to me, from our CEO, Garrett Silver, whose email address is not chief_exec.officer1@AOL. And I know that because AOL doesn't really exist anymore. Well, I guess it does for a handful of people, but I'm arranging some gifts for the staffs. Okay, including, so number one, this is this classic technique that you have now all heard about. Somebody's asking to buy gift cards. Somebody wants you to buy gift cards and send them. In your mind, I've heard of that. That's fake. Okay. But also, there's a grammatical tell here, staffs. Okay. That's a grammatical construct that's used in the UK, Africa, India. But really, who's it from? AOL.com? Don't think so. Okay. So look at the information in front of you. Don't react to what you see because you're being pelted with bait all the time. And so again, we got bugs in Microsoft Outlook that I believe they just patched, but I don't think everybody's got it implemented. Microsoft Outlook, you could fool it by setting up a domain with Cyrillic characters. And it was fooled so well that if you send in email from the outside purporting to be somebody on the inside, it would even put the picture right out of Outlook, out of your own directory of that person. That was a bad bug. And this ended up in a lot of business email compromise, which, by the way, is a $2 billion a year problem in the United States. People just willy-nilly sending their money away. Okay, against healthcare organizations, healthcare organizations need to have the radar way, way, way up. Why? Because they are the archetype of the type of organization that is so critical, cannot stand downtime. Cannot stand downtime. That means if I snarl your organization and I say, you want it back, $3 million, they're going to pay it, right? So that's why healthcare organizations need to have incredible radar. All right. Now, the reason that this didn't work, and this was submitted from somebody who actually attended these presentations. The reason this didn't work because they knew they didn't do capital calls. Okay. The reason I know it's fake is because this is some dude in Knoxville, Tennessee, on a broadband account. All right, or at least that's what the email says it's coming from. It says DocuShare. Well, that's not an email account for DocuShare. So look. What do you think happens when you hit view attachments? It's going to ask you for a password. Stop, look very hard at what's in front of you, ask a question if you have to, then proceed to delete this. It's not just email. Here's Facebook. All right. If you look at this, there's something that sticks out so badly that you can't ignore it. It says, "Dear Facebook user." Now, look, I don't use Facebook because I'm not down with the creepy tracking. All right. But from what I remember, they're supposed to know your name. So "Dear Facebook user" is never going to fly. What do you think happens when you click on update? It's going to ask you for your password. Somebody's stealing your password. Stop what you're doing. Look, remember what we just said about use of your real name and services that know your real name, and move on. Here's Twitter. Look at the URL on the left-hand pane there. IWLTTER.com. If you're not paying attention, that looks like Twitter, kind of. Okay, they want your password. Okay, look at the one on the right. The one on the right's using a little bit of a threat there. We saw copyright infringement in one of your tweets. Oh my. Oh, that's not going to end well. Well, okay, you can appeal this at this link below because Twitter uses sites.google.com and doesn't know your name either. Okay, so there's tells on here, there's data on here, there's information that you can see that tells you this is fake. Okay, and a lot of things are going to try and threaten you like this. I have other examples in here, but the threats generally are all fake. Fake voicemail. Okay, this happens a lot. Look who this is from. Okay, I don't know, bcounty.texas.gov. Yeah, maybe, I know a lot of people in emergency management. I've worked with people in Texas through Homeland Security councils and things. Who's it to? Well, that's not me. That's not you. That's not anybody. Okay, but look at the real tell here. You missed a call from 07734. Why is Nigeria calling you? Why do you suppose? You want to return that call? I suggest you do not open the attachment. Okay, fake invoice. This one's getting real popular. The fuzzed out thing behind here, and it wants your password. Okay, it said if you want this invoice, you're going to have to give us your. So I don't really know anybody that has an Adobe Docs security password. So this one looks a little exotic. I can't think that they got a lot of victims out of this, but the technique, the fuzzed out document behind going, oh, if you want to see this, we need a password. Watch out for that. It's fake. Dropbox. A lot of people use Dropbox. Okay. Here, this one's got a real tell here that you need to commit to memory. Look who it's to. It's to no one. What does that mean? Everybody's on BCC. This went to 1,000 people. They have no idea who you are. What do you think happens when you click download documents? You're going to be prompted for a password. Stop. Look very carefully. Who is Terry McMakin? This didn't come to me. Do invoices.pdf. Looks awful unspecific. I think I'll just delete this. SharePoint. You have a new file, new capital N file sent to you from via share-point, all caps. Okay. Well, the grammar on here is a dead giveaway, but what do you think happens when you hit review file? It's going to ask for your SharePoint password, your login credentials for your Microsoft domain, right? Who is it to? It's to no one. Okay. So information is in front of you that tells you to not proceed here. Okay, this use of urgency is used increasingly, right? It's something that seems time limited is used to up your anxiety about something. Okay, Look at the top here. It says round cube without a D. Look at the logo at the bottom, round cube with a D. So that's actually that MKH at mkhamilton.com. That is my OG email account that I've had since the late 80s. And it's a real attractant for all of this stuff. I'm real popular with Nigerian princes. We'll get to that. Okay, take a look at this one. All right. Take a real hard look at this one. Okay, what do you think happens when you click on either yes, it was me or change my password?
I think this one's real. I think it's really a Zoom.
Yeah, you're going to go immediately to training because this is a phishing test right here. So I do information security officer work for a couple of large corporations, and this is their internal method for seeing if people are going to bite on this stuff. Now, I'm going to take just a second to talk about this. So first of all, the only way that you can tell that this is fake is that Zoom at securityadmin.net looks kind of shaky. Otherwise, this is pretty well done stuff, right? And I don't think people could be really, berated for clicking on this. Okay, but that's exactly what they're going to do, right? You're going to have to go straight to training. But consider this. These companies that do this kind of phishing testing, and it's hugely expensive to do this. And you do this over and over and over and over, and you never get past a 3 to 5% recidivism rate. Okay? It takes one person to bring down the whole thing. So what good does it do to spend that money? It's a much better idea to make it impossible for people to do this, which is multi-factor authentication everywhere. And again, we'll get to that and I'll explain it. And a policy of personal use on a personal device. That means you don't have to pay all that money, which doesn't do any good anyway. All right. Personal soapbox off. Okay. Neither of these are real. And, there's 30% of the people in this country will click on anything if it confirms their pre-existing worldview. Neither one of these is real. So the one on the left went straight to malware. This was a malware pushing site. And I know that because I'm the guy that my security staff here has to throw into quarantine all the time because I'm checking this stuff out. The one on the right is just going to sign you up with, 40 insurance brokers that are never going to leave you alone. Either way, neither of these is real. Who they are to information, who they're from. Can you verify the authenticity or the veracity of this before you actually, take the plunge and go click on it? Right. All right. So what was wrong with those? Your real name was not used, especially with services that know your name. Okay. The use of a reply to address. When something comes to you and looks like it's coming in from a legit address, and you reply and it's going somewhere else, going to Gmail, going to Yahoo, something like that. That's called a reply to address. Reply to address, dead giveaway. The use of BCC for all the recipients where you can't tell that you were actually the recipient here. You can assume it was thousands of people if there's nobody on the to line. Obviously, grammar and spelling errors, but they're getting better and better and better. They're actually hiring native English speakers as consultants to help them write the bait. For the most part, we now all have this banner saying, hey, this person says, this is somebody that works in this organization, but this came from the outside. Don't ignore that. That banner is on there. It's trying to tell you something. But the big thing is, you didn't expect any of those. And that's the biggest thing. The stuff comes randomly and out of the blue. Unless it's been, really targeted and they've kind of, developed a relationship over time, which is rare. Most of this stuff is like, boo, shotgun blast out over the internet. Everybody's on the BCC line and they're just looking for somebody to trip over it. Okay. Do not proceed. Okay. Real quick. Let's talk about some phone stuff. Right now, there is legislation that is trying to address this problem of SIM swapping, and here's how this works. So I call up Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, whoever, and I say, hey, listen, I was taking a ferry across Puget Sound. I was taking a picture of Mount Rainier, and I dropped my phone. It's the bottom of Puget Sound. So I got this new phone, and I need you to hook up my old phone number to this SIM card. And if you can fool them into believing that you are that person, okay, you are now holding that person's phone. You have just assumed that person's identity as far as the phone goes, which means if the phone was being used for multi-factor authentication, they can now get into your bank account, if they have a password. They can try PayPal, Bank of America, Amazon. But what this was used for mainly, and still is for getting access to cryptocurrency wallets, right? Because those were all tied to the phone. So millions of dollars have been lost through this SIM swapping. What's the message here? If your phone quits working and you don't know why, you need to contact the phone company right away, right? You may have been swapped. And it looks like malware can go from your phone to your PC. So it's always a better idea to use a wall charger rather than the USB charger on your or the USB port on your computer. Thank God it doesn't go the other way. Oh, wait, it does. So yeah, Windows malware can attempt to take over your Android device. So again, not only using a wall charger preferentially, especially if you don't know the computer that you're going to plug it into, but think about things like in airports, the charging stations. You have no idea what technology is on the other side of that USB port, none. And in fact, the United States government has prohibited doing any business with about 59 technology companies because of stuff like that. Huawei, ZTE, a lot of Chinese companies, which, strangely enough, is where all that stuff comes from. So be careful about things like charging stations that, are not under your control. The apps. Okay, I know a lot of people download a lot of apps. This is an ongoing problem every day. Google, Apple, everybody is removing fake apps from their stores. Right? There's a reason all this stuff is free. It's because it wants something from you. And for the most part, what they do is they trap your user behavior, your location, and movement information. And that's all aggregated. And that can be purchased by resellers of this stuff. And yes, they do resell this. And it is commonly purchased by police departments so that they can get location information on people without going through the warrant process. All this stuff is happening. But these apps, when you go to download an app, how long has it been out there? How many people have downloaded? How is it rated? What do people say about this? Do I really need this? Because you put something like that on your phone, it can be hitting ad networks in the background. You're going to pay for all that traffic. Somebody will get paid for those ads being hit. It can, like I say, just track you. I mean, straight up spyware. So again, be careful with the apps and evaluate. How many people have downloaded? How long has it been here? Because all of the app stores have lots of people looking at this stuff every day. When they find the bad stuff, they'll toss it out. If you download it before it gets tossed out, you're a victim. USB drives. Okay, yeah. A USB drive that has been to your teenager's high school should be permanently quarantined. So fundamentally, our company, Critical Insight, does two things. Number one, we kick bad guys out of computer networks. We monitor the networks. We see something going on. We put out the little fire before it gets big. The other thing we do is break into computer networks. And we know if we are having any problem at all breaking into a network, somebody's pretty solid, we will throw infected USB sticks in the parking lot. Why? Because it always works. There will be a good Samaritan that has to see what's on that stick to try and find the owner. Works every time, okay? So if you can, at your place of business, you should have an authorized removable media device, okay? Honestly, they should be encrypted because they get lost all the time, but don't use your kids' USB sticks. Stay away from the ones that they give away at conferences even. Use a little discretion in how you move data around. You will be pleased when you don't become a victim. Okay, now my part that I like the best. Miscellaneous threats. Okay, everybody's heard of the Nigerian prince, right? It's also called a Nigerian 419 scam. 419 because that's the penal code in Nigeria for fraud. And that's what this is. So the way an advanced fee scam works is there is some offer of something that looks really, really good. And they're saying, I've identified you as the person who can help me move a shipment of gold from Thailand to China. All of this money that was stolen from the Iraqi government, I want to move into the country. It's always something really shady going on here. And what happens is they are going to start to ask you for money. I need to pay a bribe. I need to travel to the other side of the country to meet these people. I need to file this paperwork. And it never, ever stops. You pay them. There is no payout ever. And I've seen people get caught up in this like this for years. I have family who have been fooled by this. And look at this. Who's it from? Sergeant Andrew Chandler at millwith2ls.org. Okay. Dear friend. All right. I got millions of dollars in a box of gold. I identified you as the person to help me here, but I don't know your name. Okay. And who's it to? Recipients. They're all BCC'd, right? Okay. Well, here's Godwin Jack. Jake and I actually had a pretty good time with Godwin Jack, who wanted to invest in the company until 4 or 5 messages later found out what the company actually does and the fact that we actually do put people in prison. Godwin Jack went away. And here, you probably didn't know this, but Jeff Bezos knows me. But he goes by sergeantken.miller@gmail.com. And he knows me, but he addresses me as dear friend and then has to have me remind him of my name. So, here we go. I get a ATM card with 1.9 million on it. It's coming to you. Just tell me who you are. All right. And again, the requests for, hey, I need you to send me a fee of $350 for processing. And if you think that there's a $1.9 million card that's going to follow up, you're wrong. This is an interesting one. We think this one was also a 419, right? An advanced fee scam. This came into our info address. And it gets distributed to a lot of people who are intensely paranoid. So here I represent a publicly traded company in the cybersecurity acquisition arena. Well, that sounds good. Why are you sending email from MSN then? So looks like he's got a Bay Area phone number. So of course, we start checking this guy out. We find out there was a William Faulkner who did mergers and acquisitions for a mining company in the Midwest 20 years ago. So whoever the bad guy is here has done a little bit of research to provide that patina of believability. If somebody went and Googled it, oh, well, there is a William for, okay, right? No, this would end up the same way. We would be asked for money over and over and over, right? Use of threats. If they're threatening you, all they want you to do is pay them. All right. And there are several variations on this. Hey, is this you on film? We caught you on film doing this, So, the lawsuit is $2,500. Your outstanding balance was $698. But if you make the payment of $300 by today, well, let's go ahead and close this out. Okay. Well, who did it go to? Ace Cash Services. Okay. This is called spray and pray, shotgun blast out over the internet. Everybody's BCC'd, delete, move on. The computer support scam. You're in the middle of a web page. Thing pops up, says, hey, you're full of viruses. No, you're not. If you call that number, they're going to have you connect to a website. They will connect to the website. The website will join the two computers and they will take over your mouse and they will run fake tools. And then they'll say, hey, looks here like your maintenance contract is up. You want to buy a new one? Okay. All fake. Close the tab. Move on. Work at home scams. Yeah. So, these are more prevalent when we're having economic problems, at the national scale, right? Everybody's looking for a job, and all of these offers come out. Hey, be our secret shopper, right? Be our agent, right? Well, here's how this works. They're going to send you a check. The check's going to be for right around $2,000, and they're going to say deposit the check. Bank's going to say it's okay, and then go out and have a meal at this restaurant. Write a report. Get a workout at this gym, write a report, and then take the money that's left over, keep $300 for yourself, and then go to Western Union and wire it to this address and write a report. Okay, so yes, they will send you a check. It looks like this. So the bank routing number at the bottom is real. The account number is not. This is a forgery. And you deposit this in your bank, and your bank goes, up. Routing number's fine, looks good, and they put that money in your account. And you go to dinner, and you go get a workout, and then you go wire money away at Western Union, and you're busy writing your reports, and you get a phone call from the bank, and they go, hey, you know what? That check was a forgery. We got to pull all that money back out of your account. You just wired away your own money. I hope the meal was good. Okay. Now look, on this check, you can see there are some tells here. Upper left, Portland, Oregon, right? Top center, US Bank Corp, not US Bank Corp. So be aware. And the reason this is for right around $2,000 is because they figure, yeah, it's probably in somebody's checking account and they can wire that much money away. So, okay, just a few do's and don'ts. Hope these examples have been instructive. Don't click on every link. You're going to trip over a website that smacks you. Okay, especially if the links come from unknown persons. You know, and we all get this stuff all the time, right? Why did some internet rando send me this? You got to ask yourself that question. Okay, the apps, you know, they're fake. They track you. Make sure that you evaluate them before you download them. Yes, everything you're being offered is too good to be true. The internet is here to sell to you, steal from you, and manipulate your opinion. Okay, it's too good to be true. Now, that last bullet there, let me talk about this a little bit. So, in today's world, just about everybody has one of these, okay? And if Facebook lives here and Gmail lives here, and they don't live on your work computer, you can avoid 40% of the problem. And how do I know that? Because when I worked at the City of Seattle, we took a lot of measurements, and we verified that 40%, the cause of 40% of the compromised assets on the City of Seattle networks were due to the use of personal email. Okay, so if you just have a policy that says personal use on a personal device, you don't even need to have some technical enforcement there. Just make sure people know this and they start to change their behavior. You're going to run a whole bunch of the problem off a cliff. Okay, for users, when the big page comes up and it says, we really don't want you to go past this, we don't like what this site looks like, it may be malicious, don't check it out. Just close it and go somewhere else, okay? Don't reuse company passwords, especially. It's a real good idea to just not reuse any passwords, but that turns out it's really hard for us to do, right? And there's research going on that will finally get us away from passwords someday. Today is not that day. So don't reuse passwords, especially company or government passwords. Don't leave your stuff unattended. That's a special message in there for my own salespeople. But don't leave your stuff unattended, even locked in a trunk, okay? Now, multi-factor authentication. I said I would explain this. Here's what multi-factor authentication is. There are 3 factors that you can use to authenticate yourself. Okay, authenticate, prove I am who I say I am. Okay, number 1, something I know. That's a password. Number 2, something I have, like my phone, that the code's going to come over. Number 3, something I am, my iris print, my palm print. We used to have to work in the emergency operations center every time there was 2 inches of snow and Seattle got paralyzed. And that's the way you get into the EOCs, with your palm print, right? So that's what multi-factor authentication is. And if you use that everywhere, remember how many times I said when something asks you for a password, stop what you were doing. If you have multi-factor authentication enabled everywhere, giving away your password won't do anybody any good, right? I will give you my Gmail password and you will not be able to get into my Gmail account because my phone's here is going to go, hey, somebody's trying to log into your account. Is this cool? And I'm going to say no.
Is your password still chicken1?
No, I changed it after that article came out. Okay, and full disk encryption. You know, if you can use BitLocker, Microsoft stuff, that's great. It's easy to use. That way, if somebody does steal your device, a laptop, it's a tree falling in the forest. You've lost nothing. Okay. More important than anything else, if you see something, say something. Okay. Hey, you said you were going to give us this COVID information, and I logged in, and then nothing happened. My computer's gotten really slow, and I don't know why. Right. So if you report this stuff, you might be able to head off a disaster, right? Cleaning up one person's computer is no big deal. Restoring an entire organization that's been completely encrypted and is unable to operate when you have to negotiate with ransomware operators in Russia, that's a bad, bad day. And if you see something and say something and the help desk cleans it up, no harm, no foul. All right, and just a little bit on OPSEC here. So this is kind of just keeping your own personal secrets when you're in different kinds of settings. Okay, so this is a very famous cartoon. This is called XKCD. The site is xkcd.com, and this one in particular, everybody knows. Okay, what it's trying to get across here is the way that we have been instructed to create passwords, which are upper, lower, long, number, special character. Those are insanely hard to remember, especially if you maintain a policy of not using the same password on lots of different places. It's got to be different every time. Well, it turns out that a better password in terms of, or a passphrase in terms of how long it would take to brute force it, just use I can have a program do guesses with every character, number, letter, special character, and just cycle through every permutation of all of those things. And it will take a while to do, but it can be done. Computers are fast. If you use 4 words separated by spaces, it takes longer to guess that. Right? It's the number of bits of entropy, but right, the disorganization in it, right? So, 550 years to guess your password, that's pretty safe password. And it's not that hard to remember, okay? So like the first line of a book you like, right? Correctly punctuated, or just 4 words separated by spaces. But I would say don't use correct horse battery staple, because everybody knows that. This really is a famous cartoon. And in fact, the password guessing dictionaries have correct horse battery staple in them now. Okay, so choose good passwords, but multi-factor authentication, again, and password vaults are much better, right? I use multi-factor authentication. I don't care who knows my password. I'm using Dashlane, OnePass, all of the password managers. Let it create passwords for you. You don't even need to know them. Okay, those are really good to use. All right, when you're at home, you are now part of your business's security problem. Okay, so if your Wi-Fi password is the name of your dog, you're doing it wrong. If your internet router is open for administrative login to the internet, you're doing it wrong. Right? Those are 2 things right there that you need to clean up. But it also has to do with what's going on in the rest of your home network. Are there people in there who are moving USB sticks around all the time? And are you tempted to use one of those, right? So, and I will say too, when we talked about vulnerabilities, your home gear gets vulnerable as well. And it's hard to know, and it's sometimes your ISP will just replace these things. But if you have stuff from Netgear, for example, you might want to pay attention to when the announcements come out that there is some kind of vulnerability that's being exploited by actors all over the world. And know this, in particular, Chinese actors use compromised home routers to launch attacks. Okay, so the next government attack could come from your home router if you don't take care of it.
And this photo here, that photo really just hits home, because
Yeah.
so many people. We had that one case where somebody had his, I think it was his daughter, but had his daughter accidentally download something bad on his computer.
Yep. Okay, and finally, when you're in public, right? Don't talk about stuff that's secret. And I realize not much of us are in public like we used to be, but don't talk about stuff that's secret. If you're on an airplane, be nice to the flight attendants. And use a privacy screen on your laptop. These things work really well. You can't see your screen from the side or behind or above or anything like that, and you can see it. Those are great. Beware of public wireless. And so this thing called the evil twin attack, and I've seen this at SeaTac Airport. When you connect to free airport wireless, it might not be free airport wireless. It may be some person sending that off from their laptop. And if you connect to the laptop, what it's going to do is just going to move your traffic through it and then off to the real access point, and they're going to trap all of your traffic and analyze it later. So, and these abound. And North Korean actors in particular like to compromise public Wi-Fi so they can start collecting information on people. Okay, and with that, Jake, back to you.
Oh, hey, I said there were going to be prizes at the end, and there is a survey in the chat right now. Now, we deeply realize the irony of giving you a link to click after Mike said don't click links, but trust us, which is also what a criminal would say. But anyway, the survey's there. We really do, believe it or not, that is an improvement on the first one Mike did a year ago. We take your feedback seriously, and we really appreciate it. So please take the survey. Also in that survey is a chance to... it's not a chance, but you can get a gift card or donate the gift card to a food bank. So again, survey. Thank you so much for being here. You did something good for the world. You're not going to click on that one link. And one more thing is we would love for you to invite other people. We're going to do this every week for the month of October, and then we'll switch back to doing it every other week. But we're doing it every week. I was looking at who's here. A bunch of you are IT directors or work in IT departments. There are a lot of people you work with who could benefit from this. Accountants, HR people. There was that note in the chat that HR people are getting a bunch of bad links, malicious links. So invite them. This is free. Send them. Same link you use to sign up has every one of them. If you need anything from me, it's just jake@criticalinsight.com, which I will put. Well, I did put it in the chat. It's there. Anyway, so email me if you need a link or if you need anything. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great weekend. Mike, you sound like you have something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say if you want to sign up for the IT Security News Blasts, you'll get it at 5:15 a.m. Pacific time every weekday. It's 5 minutes with a cup of coffee, and you know everything that's going on in the world.
And Mark asks if we'll give out the deck. We never have. And then Mike in this presentation said,
Why
we'll
not?
give you the deck.
Sure.
Okay. So Mark, email me and I'll email you back with the deck. But anyway, you'll also get a video of this automatically from the system. I can't believe Mike offered the deck. Anyway, all right, everybody. Have a good Friday and have a good weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.